Have you ever been so lost in an activity that the world around you just seemed to melt away? Hours might feel like minutes, your focus becomes laser sharp, and you feel an almost effortless command over what you're doing, a sense of exhilaration and deep satisfaction washing over you. What if I told you that this isn't just a random occurrence, but a specific state of mind you can actually cultivate, a state that could be the single fastest way to upgrade yourself, to unlock peak performance, and to find genuine, lasting fulfillment in almost anything you do? This state has a name, and understanding it, harnessing it, could fundamentally change how you approach your work, your hobbies, and indeed your entire life. We're about to dive deep into a concept that psychologists have studied for decades, a powerful catalyst for personal growth. Get ready to explore how to tap into your own version of this ultimate human experience. Welcome, everyone, to a journey into the heart of what makes us feel truly alive and capable. Today, we're not just talking about self-improvement, we're talking about a profound shift in how you experience your own capabilities and the world around you. The concept we're exploring is often called flow, or optimal experience, a term coined by the renowned psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He described it as a state where you are so completely absorbed and focused on an activity that everything else disappears. Your actions and your awareness merge. You're not thinking about yourself, your worries, or the time. Instead, you're operating at your full potential, feeling a sense of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity itself. Imagine a musician lost in their performance, an athlete in the zone, a writer whose words just pour onto the page, or even a gardener meticulously tending to their plants, completely engrossed. This isn't about being hyper or stressed. It's a calm, intense concentration, a harmonious dance between your skills and the challenge at hand. When you're in flow, you're not just getting things done, you're growing, learning, and experiencing a deep sense of satisfaction that comes from within. This isn't some mystical, unattainable state reserved for a select few. It's a fundamental part of the human experience, and today we're going to unpack how you can invite more of it into your life, making you more effective, more engaged, and ultimately a more developed version of yourself. This is about stepping into a more powerful, more focused, and more fulfilled you. Let's consider the power of this state through a simple, relatable scenario, something many of us might have witnessed or even experienced in a work environment. Picture a busy assembly line in a factory. On this line, there's a worker, let's call him Alex. Alex finds his job mind-numbingly dull. As he performs his repetitive tasks, his mind is anywhere but on the components in front of him. He's replaying an argument from the morning, worrying about a flat tire on his car, fretting over unpaid bills, or idly wondering about the latest office gossip he overheard during break. Because his attention is scattered, he often fumbles, makes small errors, and struggles to keep pace with the rhythm of the line. His colleagues seem to move more efficiently, and he frequently finds himself lagging, leading to frustration, reprimands from his supervisor, and even deductions from his pay. His workday is a drag, a source of anxiety, and he leaves feeling drained and unaccomplished. The difference between Alex and Ben isn't the job, the environment, or the tools. The fundamental difference lies in their internal state, their ability to manage their attention. Ben has learned, perhaps intuitively, how to block out distractions, maintain unwavering focus, and thereby enter a state of flow, even in a repetitive factory job. Alex, on the other hand, is constantly battling internal and external noise, never truly present in his work. This story beautifully illustrates a profound truth highlighted by educators and psychologists alike. Concentration is paramount. The Russian educator Konstantin Ushinsky once said something to the effect that attention is the only doorway through which anything in our consciousness can enter our mind. Everything you perceive, learn, or remember must first pass through this gateway of focus. If that door is closed or constantly swinging wildly, very little of substance can make its way deep inside. This means concentration isn't just a nice-to-have skill, it's the very foundation of all our mental activities, the bedrock of our cognitive function. Without the ability to open and hold this door of concentration, we remain disconnected from our own inner potential. We can't truly know what we're capable of, who we could become, what our unique contribution to the world might be, or even what our life's purpose is. Furthermore, Csikszentmihalyi argues that what often makes life feel unsatisfactory or chaotic is a state he calls psychic entropy. Think of it as mental disorder or inner chaos. Research shows that whenever we're engaged in something without being focused, this psychic entropy tends to increase. Our mind becomes cluttered with irrelevant thoughts, worries, and anxieties. This mental static disrupts our consciousness, fragments our sense of self, and severely diminishes our ability to learn effectively and perform optimally. It's like trying to tune into a radio station with constant interference. You only get bits and pieces, and the overall experience is frustrating. Therefore, to truly develop ourselves, to build a coherent and strong sense of self, we must actively counteract this entropy. And the most powerful way to do this is by systematically increasing the frequency and intensity of our flow experiences. The very first non-negotiable key to unlocking this state, the master key if you will, is complete and utter concentration. It's no coincidence that many discussions on peak performance and deep satisfaction often circle back to this theme. If you've ever explored concepts like deep work, as popularized by Cal Newport, you'll recognize the immense overlap. In fact, flow and deep work are like two sides of the same coin. One describes the optimal state, the other describes the practice of getting there. The profound lesson that intertwines these ideas is the power of sustained, high-quality concentration. When you cultivate the ability to fully immerse yourself in a single task, to shut out the noise, and dedicate your entire mental faculty to what's in front of you, it's almost as if a cascade of positive changes begins. Knots in your thinking start to untangle. Your capacity to learn and master complex skills skyrockets. You transform from someone easily replaceable to someone with a core, valuable ability. And perhaps most surprisingly, your overall sense of happiness and fulfillment in life can increase dramatically. This isn't hyperbole. It's a testament to the transformative power of a focused mind, something I've personally experienced and worked on cultivating over many years. For those familiar with the strategies for cultivating deep work, you might recall a few distinct approaches. There's the rhythmic strategy, where you establish a consistent daily habit of deep work. For example, you might dedicate the first 90 minutes of every morning before checking emails or social media to your most important, cognitively demanding task. You commit to this period with absolute focus. If worries or distracting thoughts arise, you quickly jot them down on a piece of paper, fold it, and make a mental note to address them later, thereby training your mind to stay on task during the designated time. Then there's the bimodal or dual mode strategy. This involves dividing your time into clearly defined stretches of intense, uninterrupted, deep work and other periods dedicated to more shallow, logistical tasks. For instance, you might dedicate 4 full days a week to a major project, completely immersed, and then use the remaining 3 days for meetings, emails, administrative work, and other less demanding activities. This allows for significant blocks of focused effort while still accommodating other responsibilities. A more extreme approach is the monastic strategy. Here, individuals aim to eliminate or drastically reduce shallow obligations altogether. They might isolate themselves, disconnect from many forms of communication, and dedicate almost all their working hours to deep, focused pursuit. This is often favored by those in highly creative or intellectually demanding fields who require vast, uninterrupted swaths of time for contemplation and creation. I've experimented with all of these, and while each has its merits, the strategy I found to be the most challenging, yet ultimately the most rewarding and practical for modern life, is what Cal Newport calls the journalist strategy. This isn't about being a journalist by profession, but rather adopting their ability to switch into a state of intense concentration on demand whenever a window of opportunity arises in their schedule, much like a journalist on a tight deadline who must produce high-quality work quickly. Mastering this strategy means you're not dependent on perfectly quiet environments or long pre-scheduled blocks of time. You develop the mental agility to dive deep into focus whenever you have a spare 30 minutes, an hour, or even just 15 minutes between commitments. When you can do this, your ability to concentrate becomes incredibly robust. It allows you to achieve high levels of productivity, forge a profound connection with whatever you're doing through conscious, intentional engagement, and live a life that feels more fully experienced, moment by moment. I'll be honest, I used to be someone who found it incredibly difficult to concentrate if there was any background noise. I needed complete silence, a secluded corner to effectively work or read. However, life changes. New environments for study and work meant I no longer had the luxury of vast, quiet stretches of time. Juggling learning, working, reading for personal growth, and creating content all became a significant challenge. I believe many of you can relate to this. Modern life has a way of fragmenting our time into tiny, disjointed pieces. This makes the ability to summon deep focus at will not just a desirable skill, but an essential one. The single most effective practice that helped me cultivate this on-demand focus was, and continues to be, mindfulness. Not just formal meditation, but mindfulness infused into everyday activities. Mindfulness while eating, noticing the tastes, textures, and smells. Mindfulness while walking, feeling the sensation of my feet on the ground, the air on my skin. Mindfulness while brushing my teeth, dressing, or washing dishes. Every mundane action became an opportunity to practice bringing my full, conscious attention to the present moment. My primary guide in this journey has been the teachings of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. I immersed myself in his books on mindfulness, and then, critically, I put those teachings into practice daily. I consciously reminded myself to be mindful in my speech, to be aware of my words and their impact. When fatigue or anger arose, I learned to meet those states with mindful awareness rather than reactive judgment. When you consistently practice bringing your focused attention to the present moment in these small, everyday actions, something remarkable happens. Your general ability to concentrate strengthens, like a muscle being regularly exercised. Gradually, you'll find it easier to fully immerse yourself in your work or studies, regardless of the external environment or the time constraints. And when you can achieve this total mental absorption, you begin to experience that profound, selfless joy of flow. This ties into what some neuroscientists discuss regarding dopamine, not the instant gratification kind, but the dopamine linked to anticipation and motivation. When you're deeply engaged, these present moment molecules, as some call them, work in concert with dopamine pathways that respond to progress and expectation, creating a powerful feedback loop. The deeper the focus, the greater the sense of satisfaction, which in turn motivates you to seek that focused experience again. It becomes a virtuous cycle. Over time, you'll notice you're less easily distracted by the complexities and noise of the outside world, less swayed by irrelevant information. This profound, internally generated joy acts like a buffer, a shield against the chaos of the external world, and, just as importantly, it helps you quiet the turmoil within. Ultimately, almost every meaningful action or endeavor in life requires you to first pass through that gateway of concentration, to return to your true self, fully present and engaged. This is the foundational element for easily entering the flow state, for enhancing your performance, unlocking your potential for continuous growth, and, crucially, for experiencing a deep and abiding inner joy. Beyond building that bedrock of intense concentration, the second critical element for experiencing flow is to be wholeheartedly engaged in a specific kind of task. But this begs the question, what kind of task is most conducive to flow? Csikszentmihalyi's research points to a crucial balance. The activity must be challenging, but not overwhelmingly difficult, and similarly, it shouldn't be too easy. If a task is far beyond your current skill level, you're likely to feel anxious, frustrated, and eventually give up. Conversely, if it's too simple, offering no real challenge, you'll quickly become bored and disengaged. Neither boredom nor anxiety is fertile ground for flow. Think of it like this. The sweet spot for learning and growth, as some describe it, is at the edge of your comfort zone. You need to step slightly outside what feels easy and familiar, introducing a degree of challenge that stretches your abilities. However, you don't want to venture so far out that you feel lost or overwhelmed. The ideal activities are those that are just within your capacity to manage, where your actions feel natural and fluid, yet still require you to stretch. As you engage in such a task, you should be able to receive clear and immediate feedback on your progress. This feedback doesn't have to be external praise. It can be an internal sense of knowing whether you're on the right track. When you successfully complete a part of the task or the entire endeavor, there's a resulting sense of satisfaction. And this isn't just a superficial, fleeting, "oh good, I'm done" kind of feeling. It's a deeper, more resonant contentment that emanates from within. This implies that the work you're doing must achieve a harmony between your mind and your actions. It shouldn't create internal conflict. For instance, if you force yourself into a high-paying job that, deep down, you find morally questionable or misaligned with your values, perhaps you despise the manipulative tactics your company uses to sell its products, then even if you excel and hit all your targets, you're unlikely to experience that profound internal satisfaction. You might get temporary highs from the dopamine rush, the status, or the admiration of others. You might climb the ladder, earn more, gain more respect. But if the work itself feels hollow or compromises your integrity, you'll likely end up feeling empty, regardless of the external rewards. As Csikszentmihalyi himself noted, chasing insatiable desires, driven by greed or external validation alone, will never lead to a sustained state of flow. Therefore, the ideal task is one that isn't primarily driven by base desires or external pressures alone. It should be inherently challenging, but not insurmountably so. When you find such an activity, you can pour your whole being into it. Combine this with that unwavering concentration we discussed earlier, and you'll find time seems to warp, your sense of self fades into the background, and you feel as if you're effortlessly carried along by a current. This is the essence of the flow experience. Now, a common question arises. This sounds great for activities I naturally love, but what about tasks I dislike? It's impossible to be wholehearted about something I dread. This is a valid concern. I'm reminded of a wonderful sentiment from Anne of Green Gables. If you decide to have a good time, you'll generally have a good time. If you make up your mind to be miserable, you'll be miserable. There's a profound truth there. Csikszentmihalyi does advise finding work you're passionate about, as this naturally makes it easier to enter flow. If you're fortunate enough to be doing work you genuinely love, that's a tremendous blessing. Cherish it, nurture it, and continue to develop within it. However, the reality is that not everyone is in their dream job, or even knows what their passion is. In such cases, rather than succumbing to dissatisfaction, a more constructive approach, as suggested in many wisdom traditions and even some modern psychology, is this. If you cannot change your circumstances, try to change your attitude towards them. Try to find the value, the challenge, the opportunity for growth, even in your current work. Csikszentmihalyi's research supports this, concluding that by consciously altering the contents of our inner experience, our thoughts, attitudes, and focus, we can largely determine our own happiness or unhappiness, regardless of external circumstances. This means that even the most ordinary, seemingly mundane job can be transformed into something interesting and meaningful if you can bring your full concentration to it and actively structure it to create flow experiences. In other words, negative emotions like boredom, lethargy, and laziness often don't stem from the task itself, but from our limiting beliefs, our subjective judgments, and our negative self-talk about that task. So, if you're faced with work you don't particularly enjoy, you can still find joy and engagement in it, provided you meet a couple of conditions. First, approach it with a positive mindset. Stop complaining, stop framing it solely as a burden or a hardship. Consciously look for aspects that could be interesting or challenging. Second, tell yourself that you can find engagement in this work. This isn't about lying to yourself, but about opening yourself to the possibility. For example, if you dread mathematics, as a book like A Mind for Numbers or Learning How to Learn might suggest, the first step to improvement is to change your belief about it. Tell yourself that math isn't inherently terrifying and that you can develop an appreciation for it, perhaps even enjoy the problem-solving aspect. Similarly, as James Clear discusses in Atomic Habits, before trying to build a new habit, it helps to establish an identity aligned with that habit. Imagine yourself as someone who is a master of that skill or someone who enjoys that activity. This new identity can then guide your actions and help you overcome initial resistance and fear. This ties into a technique Csikszentmihalyi mentions, purposeful daydreaming, or what we might call constructive visualization. This isn't about idle, baseless fantasizing. It's a form of focused mental rehearsal, a psychological self-suggestion with a clear aim. We see the power of this in countless successful individuals. Take Michael Jordan, widely considered one of the greatest basketball players of all time. He stood at 6 feet 6 inches tall in his prime. Yet, during his high school years, he was only about 5 feet 9 inches and was famously cut from his school's varsity basketball team because he was considered too short. His father was of average height, and his siblings weren't exceptionally tall either. Genetically, the odds didn't seem in his favor for reaching towering heights. But Jordan was incredibly passionate about basketball. He reportedly used to tell himself, almost like a mantra, "I have to grow taller. Grow, grow, grow." He fervently wished to be taller every single day. And this intense desire wasn't just passive wishing, it fueled action. He did everything he could think of to encourage growth. He practiced relentlessly, jumped rope, hung from bars, and ensured he had a nutritious diet. Lo and behold, something extraordinary happened. Within about a year and a half, he experienced a significant growth spurt, shooting up from around 5'9" to nearly 6'4". He easily made the team, and the rest, as they say, is history. His journey began with a dream, an intense self-suggestion, which then translated into dedicated action. Without the action, the dream would have remained a mere fantasy. Effective self-suggestion requires clear goals and a step-by-step plan for execution. These elements, a positive mindset, a belief in your ability to engage, and purposeful visualization coupled with action can help you bring your whole heart and mind even to tasks you don't initially love, making it far easier to enter that coveted state of flow. The final key strategy we'll explore for cultivating flow, especially in challenging times, is discovering its presence even in moments of solitude. Through thousands of case studies, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi observed a remarkable pattern.
Individuals who learn to find flow in their lives can often discover joy and meaning even in the most desperate or isolating circumstances. He tells the story of a woman in her 60s. After her husband passed away and her children, now adults, had moved on to build their own lives, she found herself living alone on a somewhat remote island. The stark reality of mortality, combined with the profound quiet and loneliness of her situation, initially left her feeling helpless and overwhelmed. She would often sigh deeply or find herself weeping, lost in memories of her husband and missing her children. The long, sleepless nights were particularly agonizing, each minute stretching into an eternity of sorrow. To try and cope with her grief, she began to explore the collection of books her husband had left behind on their shelves. She read voraciously across all sorts of genres. She also started writing down her thoughts, her memories, her reflections, and sometimes even sketching or painting. Unexpectedly, these activities opened up a vast and rich inner world for her. The stories and diverse perspectives she encountered in her reading and the act of expressing herself through writing and art transported her. In this inner world, she could forget the oppressive weight of time and transcend her sorrow. These enriching experiences reawakened her zest for life. Beyond her reading and writing, she started a small garden, planting flowers and vegetables, and even began raising a few animals near her home. She took to writing humorous little stories or anecdotes on a board outside her house, or drawing whimsical maps and directions for anyone who might pass by. She was no longer lost in aimless rumination or swept away by waves of negative emotion. Her spirit grew stronger, more resilient. Though still living alone, she no longer felt empty or helpless. The state of flow, found in her reading, writing, gardening, and creative expressions, continually filled the voids in her soul, preventing the drain of unnecessary mental anguish. More than that, these flow experiences nurtured her intellectual and spiritual growth, allowing her to find a new, vibrant phase of life even in her later years.
However, in our current hyper-connected, information-saturated age, many people struggle with being alone. They may not know how to simply be by themselves, let alone enjoy solitude. The moment they find themselves alone, the instinct is often to reach for a phone, turn on the TV, play a game, anything to fill the perceived void, to escape the silence or their own thoughts. The mind, unaccustomed to stillness, remains agitated, flitting from one worry or distraction to another. Csikszentmihalyi suggests that a primary reason for this discomfort is a lack of well-developed inner discipline. Year after year of seeking external stimulation can lead to a kind of mental laziness, an atrophy of our ability to direct our own attention. Psychic entropy, that inner chaos, becomes more pronounced. To counteract this, to build inner order, we need to learn to embrace and even enjoy solitude by intentionally infusing our lives with flow-producing activities. These don't have to be grand or complex. Csikszentmihalyi points out that almost any activity can generate flow if it's approached in the right way. Climbing a mountain, baking bread, learning a new dance, tending to houseplants, sewing clothes, crafting furniture from recycled materials, the possibilities are endless. These small hobbies and personal interests, pursued outside the demands of our busy work lives, become like little sanctuaries for the mind. They provide a channel for flow, helping to soothe complex emotions, recalibrate our inner state, and strengthen our sense of self. A person who is highly resilient, who can bounce back from adversity, is often someone who, even when alone or unoccupied, can find something meaningful to do. Instead of endlessly chasing external rewards or societal approval, they focus on enriching their inner lives, filling their time with moments of deep, meaningful, and fully engaged living. It's crucial, however, to enjoy these pleasures without becoming addicted to them, without becoming a slave to the pursuit of mere amusement. The goal is to find fulfilling engagement, not just fleeting distraction. Furthermore, to prevent mental chaos and keep psychic entropy at bay, maintaining a sense of balance in life is key.
Remember, anything taken to an extreme can become uncontrolled and generate negative emotions or consequences. Csikszentmihalyi also highlights two other powerful avenues for experiencing flow: appreciating art and engaging in physical activity. By continuously cultivating our ability to engage with art, whether it's music, painting, literature, or theater, we can more readily achieve a flow state. For example, listening to music not just as background noise, but with serious, focused attention, allowing the melodies, harmonies, and rhythms to resonate deeply within us, can create those optimal experiences. The emotional and intellectual vibrations stirred by high-quality artistic engagement can transport us into flow. Similarly, physical activity has always been a fantastic way to reduce stress and find flow. When we challenge our physical limits, whether through sports, dance, yoga, or even a brisk walk, negative emotions like boredom, fatigue, and dissatisfaction often seem to dissipate with our effort, almost as if they're carried away with our sweat. We're left with a lighter body and a clearer, more refreshed mind, making it easier to slip into that focused, energized state of flow and to lift ourselves out of periods of difficulty or despair. There's a line in Csikszentmihalyi's book, Flow, that has always resonated deeply with me. Whoever can persist through suffering and failure, their life will become a constant flow. He describes this as a coherent series of experiences characterized by focused, wholehearted engagement, a life lived with inner order that generates immense meaning and joy from that very order. In our quest to find and cultivate flow, we will inevitably encounter moments of loneliness, perhaps when wrestling with a difficult problem on our own, or periods of boredom when progress feels slow and repetitive. But these difficulties, this hard work, are often temporary. They are the necessary challenges, the grit in the oyster that creates the pearl, essential for our growth and maturation. So set clear, specific goals for yourself. Cultivate intense concentration. Strive to find enjoyment and engagement in the work you do, whatever it may be. Apply yourself wholeheartedly, patiently persevering through obstacles. If you do this with the aid of slow, you will undoubtedly become stronger, more capable, and more fulfilled than you ever thought possible on your journey of personal development.